Good morning, good afternoon. I am Jacques Boschung. I'm the CEO of Halborn Security. It's a pleasure to be here again with you, KP, for second quarterly. I will leave that over to you to introduce yourself.
Thank you so much for having me again. I'm so happy we get to hang out and do this on a regular basis. I'm KP, I'm the crypto CISO at Robinhood. Previously, I've spent time at BNY, BlockFi, Backed, and then was a founding member of KPMG's crypto practice a long time ago.
Okay, that's great to be here again together. So let's speak today about AI and blockchain technologies. So that's the topic, I think a very interesting topic and quite very current given the industry. So impact of AI is everywhere. We can see, we don't need to speak much about that. But impact of AI, given the true nature of crypto and of distributed ledger, could be even more impactful actually. So what does that trigger?
Yeah, I think I've talked about this a few times, but I think it's, self-sovereign intelligence and more of like a safe utopia potentially, right? Mm-hmm. Like of what it could be. It's definitely still a lot of the art of the possible, but crypto gives us self-sovereignty, it gives us platforms, it gives us ways to transact without any, oversight of one individual person or governing money. Exactly. And then I think like AI right now is probably, it's kind of where, if you look at technology, like AI is pretty, it's in its infancy probably still, I would say, in some areas, but it's also owned by a lot of the big tech companies and social media companies. And no one really knows what any of that looks like. So how do we take that for ourselves kind of in a similar way that we did with money?
Yeah, but that would
what can be done? Yeah.
And that would be then the contribution of decentralized technology to AI in that sense.
Yeah, I think
how can we have something trustworthy actually?
Yeah, I think if we could have something that, from an intelligence standpoint, we have these self-sovereign intelligence platforms that we could use and rely on that have levels of transparency that would show us what's going into it and what's coming out of it, and then would also be more accessible for everyone. Mm-hmm. I think that would be pretty cool. What do you think?
And all those things have been trained. It's also a key question. What are the data source? And one thing that was made recently by the folks at BitTensor is the fact that thanks to blockchain and the reward mechanism in the consensus environment, mm-hmm. you could reward people providing data and reward mm-hmm. nodes contributing to the AI compute power. How do you see that?
Right. So, obviously I have been well trained to think of all the things that could go wrong right. and everything. So, my question there is like, how do you know that that's not like monopolized by one single person potentially contributing, mm-hmm. What they would want what they would want the output to be. So like who's checking and who's vetting for that. And don't get me wrong, we still have a ton of problems in crypto that kind of follow this similar model, right? You have independent node providers, but like who is actually doing all of the validating and where does that actually mm-hmm. sit and where does that exist in the world? So you can really go down a rabbit hole on any of these kind of topics, right? Everything always sounds really good until you try to go and do it. And then you start to see all of the flaws when you start doing it. So I think we're probably on the precipice of that again.
I agree, but you know what? Maybe it's still a lesser evil than having those big guys like Amazon and the Google of this world having this monopoly. So whatever the mechanism, a decentralized system, a distributed system would be better than current monopoly situation we have with the big guys.
I think it's always better. And I think there's always a balance of centralization and decentralization in society, in politics, in humanity in general, mm-hmm. with money. So yes, I think some semblance of decentralization would be better than what we have today for sure.
Right. So lesser evil, as I was saying. So yes. Let's switch gear because you just said that you have been trained to see evil everywhere.
I try.
Which is good. So let's switch gear and let's speak about cybersecurity in the context of DLT, so DLT specifically, and AI. So maybe I will share with you first an experience we are doing currently at Halborn.
Would love.
So smart contract assessment or smart contract audit. what we see is that AI tools, and there are many of those, they cannot yet, and they are still far away from being able to replace the brain power of our engineers with regard to all the business logic of a smart contract, right? But we also see that we could do something else, because we receive plenty of those smart contract audit with poor QA and testing, functional QA and functional testing of the code itself. So we could have a solution where we combine, that's man-machine partnership, where the machine is doing on behalf of the customer, if he's willing to, in a secure perimeter, of course, the QA and the functionality testing, and then we move to the engineers. So I love this vision, because that's, as I said, it's this man-machine partnership. What does that
I love that too. I think where you can focus, like wherever you can automate things where it makes the most sense, I'm definitely a big fan of. I think like no company has a perfect resourcing model, right? No company has a fully staffed security team. No one ever has everything that they need. So I think wherever you can gain efficiency in a like thoughtful and methodical way and apply things where it makes sense, I definitely agree. I really like that part, because like you said, I think trying to apply AI somewhere where you actually do need the human element, and we were talking about human design earlier, right? Like, who did an AI machine build this, smart contract or this network or this protocol? No. So it's not fully going to understand like what has gone into it and some of the intricacies there. And I think human design is important. I think getting rid of that entirely or trying to automate away everything, I don't know what that does to society. I don't know who you end up building for, right? Or what you're trying to do. So on the cyber side, I think we've seen something that I've found difficult every single place that I've been at is being able to look at the security posture of your organization entirely and know where you have gaps, right? Because a lot of things are going to be disparate. You might have different lines of business. You might have different products. They may rely on the same like shared services, and they may not. They may have their own. That's really hard to document, especially if you are a large organization and you have several engineers or architects kind of deployed across all of this. You really have to talk to each other a lot and, really kind of be on everything.
And put some component of governance for those development, which is extremely challenging.
It's so hard. It's so hard to know, like, hey, if we do this change, that's then going to affect these 5 systems. And then we have an existing vulnerability here, and that could increase like our attack surface or something else. So I think trying to use AI to have like all your human inputs of your engineers who've looked at everything and know where everything is, and then use AI or machine learning to be able to sort of collate that and present something out that is kind of more of like, hey, this is your posture at any given time.
Yes.
Are you meeting another thing, governance, like you said, are you meeting your control objectives and your control requirements with this current state? I mean, really, every company is like doing all of that by hand right now, you're essentially by hand. It's not by hand, but it's by hand.
But we can put the cursor a little bit more in the middle in that man-machine partnership. I am convinced about that. So, and there is one thing also which is keeping me quite busy is this user interface, UI, UX. Okay, so you can read those days a lot of statement about agent being able to simplify massively user interface, but also authentication, authorization in a blockchain, in a crypto wallet context, because let's face it, compared with traditional application, blockchain applications are still terrible from that point of view. So what do you think about those visions that in a couple of years from now, everything user interface will be AI-based, and that it will be specifically impactful for blockchain and smart contract and all our stack of distributed technologies?
Yeah, I love it for like a retail wallet, right? Like how helpful would it be from a security perspective? And, setting the baseline, most retail users do not understand all of the security risks or the potential problems that are presented with using any given protocol or any chain or any network at any given time. So I think it would be really great if you had some sort of like AI integration that could kind of scan your wallet posture for things that you could be doing. For example, if you had infinite approvals out on several different contracts, like, and there's a little notification that's like, hey, would you like to revoke these? Like, yeah, I would, because this means I could potentially lose all my money if these are compromised. So I think,
that's a big simplification for the user, the potential.
Yeah, because also think of it this way.
While being secure, hopefully.
We live in a culture of a couple clicks. So if I have to go into my settings and then look at this and then review each thing that I'm connected to and then see what the settings are for each one, no one's doing that.
No one.
No one's doing that.
No one.
That's hard to do even at like an enterprise
level. Wishful
level.
thinking.
Yeah, and look, like I care about those things. So am I doing it? No, like I'm just being honest. Like I'm not going to go do that. So having something that can scan and check for those things and present the user with like safety options potentially, or I mean, we see this in TradFi a little bit and other applications and platforms in Web 2 that are like, hey, do this to increase your security posture on your account. Those things are all helpful because they're right in your face. And it's like, oh, I just have to do if I have to do a couple clicks and this is good and it gets rid of this box, I will do it. So I think, integrating that into a user experience with user safety in mind, I think is important. Obviously, there's a world where this gets even more advanced and your wallet or, something that you're interacting with is making recommendations on which NFTs to buy or which cryptocurrencies to buy or something, right? Like, hey, based on the NFTs you have in your wallet, you might like this collection too, or you might like this artist.
Right.
Same way Instagram suggests people you might want to be friends with, or things that you may like. So
that's the algorithm conversation we were having.
Right. So we're definitely we will get there at some point in crypto. I do think from a UI UX standpoint, there's a lot missing on like the human design element. I think crypto is very technical. It is hard to understand. It's a different way of operating. It's a different way of thinking. It's a different way of thinking about securing yourself. You're telling people be your own bank. No one knows what that means. And also it's my opinion is a horrible analogy. So how are you supposed to be your own bank with a cell phone? It's not computing, right? So
that's a horrible analogy. Yeah,
it's a horrible analogy.
Yeah,
it's not computing. You will never be as secure as a bank that spends hundreds of millions of dollars on security.
Of course.
What are we talking about?
Of course, that cannot be.
Yeah.
But you know what? You trigger here a very good thinking. I'm coming from the classical cybersecurity perimeter initially. And in that perimeter, there is a famous statement, and that Microsoft has placed the statement first. They say, okay, with basic IT hygiene, you prevent 95% of all the breaches. Okay? Basic IT hygiene. Now, fast forward into a blockchain context where we would have a user interface based on an AI agent. How do you do, from a CISO standpoint, how do you secure that basic IT hygiene? Because at the end of the day, a blockchain, you know what? It's a database.
Right. No, I think you bring up a good point. But I will say, most humans still don't understand what basic cyber hygiene even is, if you're looking at a retail perspective, right?
Right.
There's a lot of people that still don't use password managers. There's a lot of people that don't follow basic cybersecurity protocols. Yeah, and there's, there are a lot of cyber people that I follow, and it's for years you say the same things, but it's not computing, right? It's not computing to the average user of oh, I should do these things and this is why. So that you have to find another way to relate to it. But I think in terms of getting back on topic, I think, basic cyber hygiene for, a blockchain security model or using crypto, I don't even know if we've defined that yet, but if you could program that somewhere, where it's part of your setup potentially, you can't create a wallet until you've done. But it's a people process tool kind of thinking. That's very much what kind of standard procedure we expect from users, from the IT people. Correct.
So I think we have to invent plenty of things in that space.
And then what do you do when a lot of these things are open, right? When you have a cyber team who's able to build stuff for an end user, that's a very different model than the Web3 model.
You go to GitHub and you have access to the code. So
it's a very different very different model. And then, to be fair, most companies are not shipping security features, most Web3 companies are not shipping security features. That's not going to be the focus.
No.
But they
will have. You know what? We believe at Halborn that, and we are a little bit drifting, but it's still connected to the topic of AI. But we believe that because of the scale of what's happening currently, legislation change, pension funds investing very soon massively in crypto and so on and so forth. So the attack surface and the impact of exposure is going to the roof.
Absolutely.
Okay? So we believe that secure by design thinking will be imposed by the TradFi to the DeFi if those guys want to work together. But then we would need, and we spoke in the first edition of that, we spoke about standards, we spoke about ISO 27001, about SOC 2 Type 2. But how do we get there, including the AI component? How do we impose some norms and some standards to those DeFi who wants to work with TradFi? That's something you are in the middle of that.
Yes. It's honestly a tough place to be. You know, it can make you want to pull your hair out, to be honest. On one side, you have your build fast and break things group, and then you have your sort of, you know, red tape everywhere, and trying to balance between that. I think probably last year I spoke at something, and I think like CISO was talking about doing secure by design and like pushing that out even more, which I think is great because I'm a big proponent of secure by design. I think you should have architects and engineers embedded with every single production team that you have, helping them think about these, literally that, like thinking about all of these things and providing those inputs and feedback, because you can build the coolest thing ever.
Totally
makes
exposed.
a ton of money, and you know, in 2 seconds it can be gone. So, you know, I'm a big proponent of that. It's really hard to balance between those two worlds though. And I've been in that kind of space for a long time, right? Like you'll have...
because you don't want to be a business preventer neither.
You're in a tough spot because ultimately you want to help and you want to do the right thing, right? But sometimes there's not enough appetite for that. And this is kind of going, especially I would say like in startup world, no one's really thinking about that until you've made money, right? Like, well, if we're not making money, we don't care yet.
Right.
But by the time you start caring, it's like a little late.
Because the secure by design phase is too late.
Yeah, especially
if
we're talking about money, right? Like why, I say this all the time, like why does crypto not have a similar execution rigor to something such as aerospace?
Yeah.
Like we were talking about people's life savings and life's worth, and while it's not life or death, you know, there's a big impact on your mental health if you've experienced a data breach, like a significant one, or if you've lost a significant amount of money. Money is important. So I think it's like, I've always been, you know, on the side of like, we should have more rigor, like more execution rigor in every single thing that we're doing, especially in finance, particularly in crypto.
But you have speed, and that's a big pressure as well.
I know.
Okay, so that will be our last point of discussion.
Yeah.
Let's speak about 5 to 10 years. What's your vision of that big merge of AI and blockchain? I'm using blockchain because that's more accurate, and DLT. And what do you think if we add, just to make a little bit more complexity in that question, if we add quantum computing and their capabilities with regard to breaking some of the crypto that has been built in the system? I'm speaking SHA-256.
Yeah, did you see, I think it was a Twitter thread, I think it was on Instagram too, it was all of the new, what was it? It's all the new stuff that's like coming out, like new technology, whatever that summit was, where they revealed all of these like really interesting things. Yeah. There was, I think, at least a few supercomputers on there, and I literally like closed it and was like, oh no, like, they're here. I actually saw the IBM's quantum thing. I saw that once. It's huge.
But their current computer is a 1200 qubit computer.
Yeah.
And if you want to break SHA-256, you need 1 million qubit.
Yeah.
And we will get there only in 2030. And if you...
It's not that far away.
Yeah, but there is a better news. That's a good news. If you want to break a consensus mechanism, you need a 1 billion qubit quantum computer, apparently. Yeah. That's what I read recently.
So they say.
So they say.
So they say. Okay, but yeah, it's 5 to 10 years out. I'll start with 5. 10 is too far for me to think. I've never.
It's science fiction
I can only
now.
think in threes. I can only think in 3s and 5s. So, in like the 3 to 5 year mark, I'll go back to like the very beginning of the conversation, like self-sovereign intelligence. Mm-hmm. I think would be fantastic. I think being able to combine that with what crypto's been able to do, would be great for all of us. I think these algorithms are hidden behind these big media companies. You really have no idea what your phone is doing to you. You may think they're showing you things that you like and you want to see, but you have no idea like what a couple clicks or a couple turns of the dial is actually doing to you. I think I'm a big fan of open source. I think you should be able to open source any and everything. So I think getting to that point with AI, being able to potentially use blockchain to increase transparency with it, using AI to create more efficiencies for blockchain and crypto, because that's another thing, right? Like there's a lot of inefficiencies in the space. And I think, auditing.
Like the user interface, by the way. That's terrible. So.
Yes. So I'm there. I'm kind of thinking there. Quantum computing, I still think is a while out. I don't know what the world looks like if you break all of the encryption. I don't know if I can't let that keep me up at night. Can you? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a post-quantum. So I tend to trust those numbers I was mentioning before. So I think SHA in 2030, but you would have really big player being able to have their 1 million qubit in their quantum computer. So that's already a limit. So it seems to me, in fact, that DLT is the answer against and the consensus mechanism. Proof of work or proof of stake could be the answer to some of those challenges just beyond the cryptology itself. So I am still a little bit optimistic. So KP, that was fantastic.
I always have a great time with you.
I can't wait for the next quarterly. And thank you so much.
Q3 next time, right? Summer, we should go somewhere fun.
We do Florida.
Okay, great. I'll see you there.
Thank you so much.